Hey creeps, it's Alice. Welcome back. I hope you're having an absolutely glorious day. If you're wondering about my makeup, you can watch the tutorial that I filmed for this on my beauty channel. It'll be linked below. This is a true story called The Giant Spider. It's true. The Giant Spider is a true scary story about two mysterious deaths in an elevator. This tale was reported as a real incident in a Turkish newspaper, and it appeared in a book about the unexplained, but there is no way to tell how true the story is. The event supposedly happened in 1990 in a part of Russia that is now in the Ukraine. In a bad part of town, the police were called to investigate a mysterious death. A man was found dead in an elevator. He was slumped against the wall, and there were 2 holes in his neck. His skin was pale white, and all of the blood had been drained from his body. The most puzzling thing about it was that there were no blood stains in the elevator, no fingerprints, and no signs of forced entry. Things took another bizarre turn 1 month later when a 13-year-old girl was found dead in the same elevator with 2 identical puncture wounds in her throat. Her body had also been sucked dry of blood. Rumors began to spread around the area that there was a vampire on the loose. See, I'm not afraid of vampires, but like a spider, a giant spider. The police were under pressure to get to the bottom of the mysterious deaths, so they stalked out the apartment. A detective and a sergeant were posted inside the elevator, riding it up and down for days. Spider probably knows not to bite a police officer. On the 3rd day, the elevator suddenly shuddered to a halt, and the lights went out. The 2 men were plunged into darkness. They pulled out their flashlights and contacted their colleagues by radio to let them know that they were trapped. There was a long silence. Then they heard a strange... It seemed to be coming from the roof of the elevator. Their hearts began beating fast as they realized something big was crawling around up there. I'm getting goosebumps. That's when they noticed a hole in the roof where the panel has fallen away. The detective aimed his flashlight at the gap and had to fight back sheer terror when he saw something peering through. It was a small, hairy head the size of a fist with 8 black, shining eyes. The sergeant was claustrophobic and also had a deathly fear of spiders. Why are you on this mission? He flew into a panic and dropped his flashlight. Suddenly, the enormous spider sprang into the elevator and landed on the sergeant's face. It sank its jaws into his cheek and started sucking out his blood. The sergeant was screaming, and for a moment the detective was paralyzed. Then he took out his gun, aimed, and fired. The first shot blew off one of the spider's hairy legs. The sergeant stopped screaming, and his body collapsed to the floor. The wounded creature raced up the wall, and the detective could feel its bristly hairs as it brushed past him and escaped out the hatch. When their colleagues managed to open the doors of the elevator, they found a nightmarish scene. The sergeant's corpse lay slumped against the wall, and the traumatized detective was curled up in the corner. The army was called in, and they destroyed the spider with a flamethrower. But then they discovered that it had laid eggs at the top of the elevator shaft. Dude, see, this is... Burn the eggs. Right? Burn them. Russian authorities moved quickly to hush up the incident, but news leaked out in a Turkish newspaper, which claimed that the giant spider was mutated by the radioactive fallout of the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster. The Russians denied this and claims that the story was an exaggeration. Is this story true? There's no way to tell for sure, but it's something to think about if you're ever stuck in an elevator. Dude. This was posted, this was in a newspaper? Was it on Halloween or something? Because there's no way that could have been true. A head the size of a fist. A spider with a head the size of a fist that can suck all the blood out of a human being. I don't know if that's true. If it is, then what they should have done is capture it and like do some tests on it, like they do in the movies, you know? I have another spidery story. This story is called The Black Spider, and it's inspired by an old Irish ghost story recorded by Henry de Vere Stackpool. Many years ago, in the town of Ennis, on the west coast of Ireland, there lived a man named Sir Michael Carey. The locals nicknamed him the Black Spider on account of his personality and general makeup. He lived all alone in Carey House, an old mansion on the outskirts of town, and he seldom left his home or spoke to any of his neighbors. So that just sounds like a normal person during quarantine, to be honest. One dark night, there was a fierce storm that shook the windows and rattled the doors of every house in Ennis. The next morning, the Black Spider had disappeared, and nobody knew what happened to him. His house was simply abandoned, and there was no trace of him to be found. Since he had no close family, the house was auctioned off to the highest bidder to pay off the old man's debts. The locals were a superstitious, God-fearing bunch, and soon wild rumors began to spread throughout the town. According to legend, that dark, stormy night, the devil had come to Ennis and spirited the old man away, leaving neither hide nor hair of him behind. The abandoned Carey house gained a fearful reputation, and many people believed it was haunted by the ghost of the Black Spider. The man who bought the house tried to rent it out, but nobody would dare to spend the night in it. The house lay empty for many years, and everybody for miles around avoided it like the plague. Eventually, the old house was rented by a wealthy family from Dublin by the name of Leftwich. They owned a grocer's shop, and there was almost a dozen children, mostly boys and one girl. The oldest child was a tall, red-headed strip of a girl named Nora, who helped her mother with the cooking and took care of the younger siblings. The youngest child was named Patrick, and he was not even the height of your knee. The family lived in the house while the father remained in Dublin, taking care of the shop. The rent was only £20 a year. Wow. The owner had wanted them not to go near the attic bedroom. He said there were rats in the attic and they couldn't be gotten rid of. So that was the reason the rent was so low. He warned them to keep the door of the attic shut and ignore any noises the rats made at night. That doesn't sound suspicious. The family lived there for a full month without any problems. Then, one day, something very strange happened. Nora was cleaning the bedrooms on the top floor when she happened to open the door of the attic bedroom by mistake. She let out a blood-curdling screech, slammed the door, and ran downstairs crying and screaming at the top of her lungs. When her mother saw her, she tried to calm her down, but it was no use. Eventually, she managed to get a few words out and told her mother exactly what she had seen. She said that when she opened the door, there was a horrible figure sitting in the middle of the floor. Through her tears, the girl described it as an old man in a black coat and a hat. Doesn't sound too crazy, Nora. The most horrible thing, she said, was he didn't have a face. It was more like one of those masks that children make out of a bit of paper with holes cut in it. The other children didn't believe her, and her mother told them that it all must have been a rat she saw. Gee, thanks, Mom. Still, that night, all the children slept in their mother's bedroom. They kept a dozen candles burning all night because they're afraid to sleep in the dark. Go upstairs and look, Mom. Like, what about Dad? Where's Dad? Oh, Dad's not home. Okay. Sometime after midnight, the mother was awoken from her sleep by the youngest boy, Patrick. "Mammy," he said, "do you hear the scratching too?" She sat up in bed to listen, and she was shocked when she could hear a distant scratching sound as well. It seemed to be coming from the attic bedroom. Within minutes, all of the other children were awake and out of bed listening to the scratching sound. Their teeth were chattering and their knees were knocking. They opened up their bedroom door and peered out into the darkened corridor. As they watched in horror, the handle of the attic bedroom began to turn. They didn't want to see what was coming out. Instead, they locked themselves in their mother's bedroom and didn't come out until next morning. As soon as it was light, the terrified family began packing their bags and ordered 2 cars to take them back to Dublin. They were all ready to go when the mother suddenly stopped and looked around her like a hen counting her chickens. "Where's little Patrick?" she said. They all froze and stared at each other, eyes wide with fear. I don't know, replied one of the other boys. I thought I saw him go upstairs. Don't let him go upstairs. What the hell, man? Without another word, the whole family rushed up the stairs, and when they came to the landing, they saw little Patrick standing near the door of the attic bedroom. Before any of them had a chance to call out to him, the door suddenly creaked open, and a grimy black hand emerged from the darkness. It grabbed little Patrick and dragged him into the attic bedroom. They ran to the doorway and got there just in time to see Patrick being dragged up the chimney. Nora dived into the room and just managed to get a hold of the little boy's foot before it disappeared up the chimney. The little girl pulled and struggled and screamed and bawled until the thing in the chimney let go of the child and he came tumbling down into the fireplace, kicking and thrashing and squealing like a little piglet. Nora didn't pause for a moment. She grabbed her little brother by the scuff of the neck and ran downstairs with him out to the front garden. There, his mother managed to calm him down, and the little boy told them what happened. He said that he had been grabbed by a giant black spider. The mother immediately called the police, and within minutes a car pulled up carrying the sergeant and one of his officers. When the sergeant heard the little boy's story, he went up to the attic bedroom and took a look around. When he came down again, his face was pale as a ghost. Go back to the police station, he said to the officer, and fetch me 2 shotguns with ammunition. That's what you do. That's what you do when there's a big spider. Be quick about it. I'm a brave man, but I don't want to stay here any longer than necessary. The police officer hurried off, and then minutes later he returned with the shotguns. Maybe it was a ghost they saw, said the officer. Maybe it's a priest in holy water we need for this job instead of you, me, and these guns. Take off your boots, said the sergeant. This is no ghosts. Ghosts can't pull children up chimneys. They took off their boots, and with the loaded shotguns in their hands, they crept upstairs as quietly as possible without making a sound. All of a sudden, they heard a noise like something scratching and scrambling down a drain pipe. It's coming down, hissed the officer. By God, it's not, said the sergeant, and with that he shoved the muzzle of the shotgun up the chimney and pulled the trigger. There was a deafening bang, and the chimney exploded with the force of the blast. When the dust settled, they found something black and twisted curled up in the fireplace. They hauled it out and stretched it out on the floor. It looked like it was an old man, or at least something that had once been an old man. But it had the arms and legs of a spider and a horrendous face that didn't look like it had ever been human. There it lay on the floor, as dead as a doornail, with a hole in its chest the size of a man's fist. But the strangest thing of all was that there wasn't a drop of blood to be found anywhere. Cover that wretched face, said the sergeant, and they threw a blanket over it so they didn't have to look at it a moment longer. I'm gonna save that insult for later. Later, when they took the chimney apart, they found a little hidden room behind it, all littered with the bones of rats and birds' feathers. The police determined that the room had been secretly put there by Sir Michael Carey when he built the house, and he had been living in it for years. Ever since he supposedly disappeared, he must have been over 100 years old. They say at night he would come out scavenging for food, and that they had found the bones of small children in the hidden room as well. After that, they set the house on fire and burned it to the ground. Today, all that's left of it are some charred stone walls among the trees. They burned the remains of the black spider in the house as well to destroy it forever, and if you had ever laid eyes on it, you wouldn't blame them. I don't blame them one bit. Screw spiders, man. I mean, there's something about them, like, they're cool, but, like, get them away from me. They're the creepiest, grossest, scariest, yuckiest thing ever, says the chick with the spider fucking drawn on her face. I know, it's silly, but, dude, that story, I have goosebumps. I'm not kidding, I have goosebumps. Anywho, I think that's enough spooky, spidery stories for now. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions of stories to read in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Sweet dreams.